Introduction. The challenges of religious accountability. Religion has long served as a guiding framework for morality, discipline, and community. For its followers, it provides a sense of purpose and a moral compass, offering clear principles to live by. However, what happens when someone claims to represent a religion while blatantly disregarding its teachings? This question becomes particularly pressing when it comes to public figures who make their personal lives and behaviors visible to the world. FoodieBeauty, a YouTuber and public figure, has recently adopted Islam, claiming it as her faith. Yet her actions, gluttony, drug use, vulgarity, and a lack of respect for others, seem to contradict the core principles of the religion. She promises change but continues the same behaviors day after day, leaving observers to question the sincerity of her religious commitment. This disconnect between her claimed faith and her repeated actions has drawn criticism from both non-Muslims and practicing Muslims alike. At the heart of this debate is a fundamental issue. How can a religion maintain its integrity if its followers refuse to hold each other accountable? Islam teaches that only God can judge someone's faith, discouraging Muslims from declaring others fake Muslims or questioning their sincerity. While this principle fosters unity and humility, it also leaves room for blatant hypocrisy to go unchallenged, as seen in FoodieBeauty's case. For outsiders, this lack of accountability raises questions about the religion's ability to police its own members and protect its reputation. The issue isn't limited to Islam. Hypocrisy in religion is a universal frustration. Religions often emphasize doing good, being disciplined, and striving for personal betterment. When someone claiming to represent a faith openly contradicts these values without consequences, it undermines the religion's credibility and creates confusion about its teachings. This article explores the challenges of religious accountability, focusing on FoodieBeauty's behavior as a case study. It examines the tension between Islam's no-judging principle and the need for accountability, the role of interpretation in religious teachings, and the broader implications for how religions are perceived by the world. Religious identity versus actions. Religious identity and personal actions are often viewed as two sides of the same coin. A person's actions are generally expected to reflect the values and teachings of the religion they claim to follow. However, in Islam and many other religions, faith is ultimately seen as a matter of the heart. This creates a tension between what someone believes internally and how they behave externally, particularly when their actions blatantly contradict their professed beliefs. Islam's perspective on faith and judgment. In Islam, a Muslim is defined primarily by their belief in the oneness of Allah and the prophethood of Muhammad. As long as someone adheres to these core tenets, they are considered a Muslim, even if their actions do not align perfectly with Islamic teachings. This principle is rooted in the Quran and the Hadith, with numerous teachings emphasizing that only God can truly judge the sincerity of someone's faith. One of the Prophet Muhammad's sayings illustrates this point. If a man says to his brother, "O disbeliever," it returns upon one of them. Sahih Bukhari. This warning against judging someone else's faith aims to prevent division within the Muslim community, ummah, and encourage humility. It acknowledges that humans are fallible and that even devout believers will occasionally fall short of their religious ideals. However, this teaching also creates a significant challenge. When someone's actions consistently and publicly contradict the core principles of the religion, it becomes difficult to reconcile their behavior with their claimed identity as a Muslim. The case of FoodieBeauty. FoodieBeauty's behavior offers a stark example of this tension. By publicly claiming Islam as her faith, she has associated herself with a religion that values self-discipline, modesty, and moral behavior. Yet her daily actions, overeating, cursing, openly consuming drugs, and disrespecting others stand in direct opposition to these values. While occasional lapses could be forgiven as human error, her repeated choices suggest a pattern of deliberate disregard for Islamic principles. Her behavior raises important questions. Is she sincere in her religious identity? While it's impossible to know her true intentions, the lack of effort to align her actions with Islamic teachings makes her faith appear performative rather than genuine. Does she represent Islam accurately? To outsiders, her actions might be seen as a reflection of Islam, even though practicing Muslims would argue that her behavior is un-Islamic. Should Muslims call out her behavior? According to Islamic teachings, Muslims are encouraged to advise each other privately and avoid public shaming. However, when someone's behavior is highly public and damaging to the religion's image, this principle becomes harder to uphold. the broader implication, the gap between religious identity and actions isn't unique to Islam. In any religion, individuals who claim to follow a faith but repeatedly contradict its teachings risk undermining the credibility of the religion itself. For Islam, this issue is particularly challenging because of the emphasis on leaving judgment to Allah. While this principle fosters unity and prevents unnecessary conflict, it also creates space for hypocrisy to go unchecked, especially in cases like foodie beauties. At the heart of this issue lies a fundamental question: should religious identity be determined solely by belief? Or should it also require consistent actions that reflect the religion's core values? For many, the answer lies in finding a balance between acknowledging human fallibility and holding individuals accountable for willful hypocrisy. The scholar dilemma and subjectivity in Islam. Islamic scholars play a significant role in interpreting religious texts and guiding Muslims in their daily lives. However, the reliance on scholars to provide rulings, fatwas, and clarify teachings has also created a unique dilemma: the potential for multiple, often contradictory interpretations of the same texts. This subjectivity can blur the lines of what is considered right or wrong, leading to inconsistencies that frustrate both Muslims and non-Muslims. The role of scholars in Islam. In Islam, religious guidance is drawn primarily from two sources. One, the Quran, the literal word of Allah, considered timeless and unalterable. Two, the Hadith, recorded sayings and practices of the Prophet Muhammad, which provide context and practical examples for living according to Islamic principles. While these texts are central, they often require interpretation to address modern issues. This is where scholars come in. Islamic scholars, often trained in jurisprudence, fiqh, use tools like tafsir, interpretation, and ijtihad, independent reasoning, to apply these teachings to contemporary situations. The problem of contradictory interpretations. The reliance on human interpretation creates a paradox in a religion that claims to represent absolute truth. Different scholars, influenced by their cultural backgrounds, historical contexts, and personal biases, often arrive at conflicting conclusions. This subjectivity can make it difficult for Muslims and outsiders alike to determine what is truly Islamic. For example, one scholar might argue that gluttony is haram, forbidden, because it violates principles of moderation in the Quran, Surah Al-Araf 7:31. Another might argue that overeating isn't explicitly labeled as a sin, but is instead makruh, discouraged but not sinful, leaving room for personal discretion. This flexibility is often framed as a strength. It allows Islam to adapt to diverse cultural and historical contexts. However, it also creates confusion and opens the door for individuals to cherry-pick rulings that suit their preferences. How this enables hypocrisy. In cases like foodie beauties, the lack of a central authoritative voice in Islam complicates accountability. She can justify her actions by pointing to lenient interpretations of Islamic teachings. For example, if a scholar suggests that overeating isn't technically haram, she might use this as an excuse for her gluttonous behavior. Muslims may hesitate to challenge her because the diversity of interpretations makes it hard to definitively label her actions as un-Islamic. Outsiders see inconsistency. Non-Muslims observing these contradictions may question the integrity of Islam as a cohesive belief system. If different scholars offer wildly different rulings, it can appear as though the religion lacks clear standards. This issue becomes even more pronounced in a globalized world, where individuals like Foodie Beauty publicly broadcast their actions to a global audience. Her behavior, paired with the lack of a unified response from the Muslim community, creates a perception of disorganization and hypocrisy. No central authority in Islam. Unlike Catholicism, which has the Pope as a singular voice of authority, Islam has no equivalent figure. Sunni Muslims, who make up the majority, rely on decentralized scholarship across various schools of thought: Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i, and Hanbali. Shia Muslims, meanwhile, have their own hierarchy, with figures like the Ayatollahs holding significant influence. This decentralized approach allows for diversity, but also means there is no single entity to provide definitive rulings on controversial issues, call out public figures like Foodie Beauty for misrepresenting Islam, establish a consistent standard for what it means to live as a Muslim. As a result, accountability often falls to individual communities or is avoided altogether under the premise that only Allah can judge. Implications for religious accountability. The scholar dilemma highlights a critical tension in Islam: the balance between adaptability and clarity. While the diversity of interpretations allows Islam to address a wide range of circumstances, it also undermines the religion's ability to present a unified front. This lack of consistency enables individuals like FoodieBeauty to claim religious identity without aligning their actions with its principles. For outsiders, this subjectivity can be frustrating. If two scholars can provide entirely different rulings on the same issue, how can anyone claim that Islam represents absolute truth? This question becomes even more pressing when someone's actions blatantly contradict the values the religion is supposed to uphold. A double-edged sword. While the flexibility of Islamic scholarship is often praised as a strength, it also allows individuals to exploit loopholes or justify un-Islamic behavior, creates confusion among believers and outsiders about what Islam truly stands for, erodes accountability within the faith, making it harder to challenge hypocrisy or misrepresentation. The reliance on scholars and the absence of a central authority in Islam create a system where accountability is inherently limited. This enables individuals like FoodieBeauty to exploit the subjectivity of religious interpretation, damaging Islam's credibility in the process. While the diversity of scholarship allows for adaptability, it also raises difficult questions about the integrity and consistency of the religion as a whole. The impact of public hypocrisy on Islam's reputation. Religious hypocrisy is not a new phenomenon, but in today's world of social media and public platforms, its impact has become magnified. When individuals claim to represent a religion while openly disregarding its teachings, it can damage the faith's reputation both within the religious community and among outsiders. FoodieBeauty, as a public figure, exemplifies this issue. Her actions and choices, made visible to a global audience, highlight the consequences of public hypocrisy in Islam. How public behavior reflects on Islam. For better or worse, public figures who claim a religious identity often become de facto representatives of that faith in the eyes of others. While most Muslims understand that one person's actions do not define Islam, non-Muslims, and especially those unfamiliar with the religion, may perceive individuals like FoodieBeauty as embodying its values. This creates several issues. Misrepresentation of Islamic teachings. Islam emphasizes values like self-discipline, modesty, and accountability. When someone like FoodieBeauty, who claims to follow Islam, openly engages in behaviors like gluttony, drug use, and vulgarity, it distorts the public perception of the religion. Outsiders may mistakenly believe that such behaviors are tolerated or even encouraged within Islam. Reinforcement of negative stereotypes. Islam is already a heavily scrutinized religion, often subject to misconceptions and stereotypes. When public figures who identify as Muslim behave in ways that contradict its principles, it reinforces those negative perceptions. Critics of Islam may use FoodieBeauty's actions as evidence that Muslims are hypocritical or that the religion itself is flawed. Frustration among practicing Muslims. Devout Muslims who strive to follow their faith's teachings often feel disheartened or angry when someone like FoodieBeauty misrepresents Islam. Her behavior undermines their efforts to live by Islamic values and damages the credibility of the religion they hold dear. The unique challenges of public hypocrisy. Unlike private mistakes, public hypocrisy has far-reaching consequences. Global visibility. Social media platforms amplify the reach of individuals like FoodieBeauty, allowing her actions to shape perceptions of Islam on a global scale. Lack of accountability. The Islamic principle of leaving judgment to Allah while rooted in humility makes it difficult for the Muslim community to address public figures who harm the religion's image. Cultural misunderstandings. Non-Muslims who observe these contradictions may not understand the nuances of Islamic teachings or the difference between personal failings and religious principles. This misunderstanding further erodes the religion's reputation. The role of intent and sincerity. One of the most frustrating aspects of FoodieBeauty's behavior is the apparent lack of sincerity in her religious commitment. While Islam acknowledges that humans are fallible and prone to sin, it also places great emphasis on intention and genuine effort to improve. Empty promises. FoodieBeauty's repeated claims that she will change, followed by no meaningful action, suggest a lack of genuine commitment to Islamic values. Performative faith. Her actions give the impression that her religious identity is more about appearances than substance, reducing Islam to a superficial label rather than a meaningful way of life. This lack of sincerity not only disrespects the religion, but also diminishes the credibility of those who genuinely strive to live according to its teachings. Why this matters for Islam's reputation. Religious hypocrisy, especially when public, has a ripple effect that extends beyond the individual, creates doubt among outsiders. When outsiders see individuals like FoodieBeauty claim a religious identity while blatantly contradicting its principles, they may question the integrity of the religion itself. For skeptics and non-believers, such behavior reinforces the idea that religion is often used as a facade rather than a genuine moral framework. Weakens the religion's moral authority. A religion's credibility is tied to its ability to inspire ethical behavior and self-discipline among its followers. When prominent individuals fail to uphold these standards, it undermines the religion's moral authority, inhibits constructive dialogue. Public hypocrisy distracts from meaningful discussions about Islam's teachings and values. Instead of focusing on the religion's merits, conversations become centered around the contradictions and failings of individuals like FoodieBeauty. What can be done? Addressing public hypocrisy in a way that aligns with Islamic principles is challenging but not impossible. Criticize behavior, not faith. Muslims can call out actions that contradict Islamic teachings without questioning someone's status as a Muslim. For example, what she's doing is haram and it misrepresents Islam. Promote positive role models. Highlighting Muslims who genuinely embody Islamic values can help counterbalance the damage caused by individuals like FoodieBeauty. Educate non-Muslims. Providing context about Islamic teachings and clarifying the difference between personal failings and religious principles can help mitigate misunderstandings. Public hypocrisy, especially from individuals who claim a religious identity, has far-reaching consequences for Islam's reputation. Figures like FoodieBeauty not only misrepresent the religion, but also reinforce negative stereotypes and create frustration among practicing Muslims. Addressing this issue requires a careful balance between calling out harmful behavior and upholding the Islamic principle of leaving judgment to Allah. By focusing on actions rather than faith, the Muslim community can protect the integrity of their religion while promoting a more accurate understanding of its teachings. Hypocrisy versus human fallibility. A key element of the debate around religious accountability is the distinction between human fallibility and deliberate hypocrisy. All religions, including Islam, recognize that humans are imperfect and prone to making mistakes. However, repeated intentional actions that blatantly contradict the values of a religion cross the line into hypocrisy, especially when the individual shows no meaningful effort to change. Understanding human fallibility in Islam. Islam acknowledges that no one is perfect. The Quran and Hadith emphasize mercy, forgiveness, and the opportunity for repentance. Indeed, Allah forgives all sins. Surah Az-Zumar 39:53. This verse underscores that Islam is not about expecting perfection, but about striving for self-improvement and turning to Allah for forgiveness after mistakes. The Prophet Muhammad is reported to have said, "Every son of Adam commits sin, and the best of those who commit sin are those who repent." Sunan ibn Majah. In this framework, the occasional slip-up or moment of weakness is understood and forgiven, provided the individual acknowledges their mistakes and makes a genuine effort to do better. The nature of hypocrisy. Hypocrisy in religion goes beyond mere fallibility. It involves knowingly and repeatedly acting in ways that contradict the core principles of the faith, often without any genuine remorse or effort to change. In Islamic terms, this could be described as nifaq, a behavior condemned in the Quran. They say with their tongues what is not in their hearts. Surah Al-Fath 48:11. This verse speaks to those who outwardly claim belief but act in ways that betray their insincerity. FoodieBeauty's behavior exemplifies this kind of hypocrisy. Repeated actions. Her daily indulgence in gluttony, drug use, and vulgarity goes far beyond an occasional lapse. These are deliberate, consistent choices. Empty promises. While she often claims she will change, her actions demonstrate a lack of commitment to those promises. Performative faith. Her adoption of Islamic practices, such as wearing the hijab, appears superficial when contrasted with her unwillingness to live by the religion's principles. Why this distinction matters. The distinction between fallibility and hypocrisy is crucial because it highlights the difference between a sincere believer struggling with temptation. Someone who occasionally falls short but genuinely seeks to improve can still represent the values of their religion. Their effort and sincerity matter more than their mistakes. A deliberate hypocrite misrepresenting their faith. Someone who knowingly and consistently disregards religious teachings while publicly claiming to represent the faith damages the religion's credibility and disrespects its principles. For practicing Muslims, this distinction is particularly frustrating when it comes to public figures like FoodieBeauty. Her behavior not only contradicts Islamic values, but also creates the perception that those values are optional or superficial. The role of intention, niyya. In Islam, intention plays a central role in determining the sincerity of a person's actions. Even if someone's behavior isn't perfect, their effort and genuine desire to improve are what truly matter. The Quran emphasizes this principle. Indeed, deeds are by intentions, Sahih Bukhari. FoodieBeauty's repeated actions and lack of meaningful effort to change suggest that her intentions may not align with Islamic teachings. This raises questions about the sincerity of her faith and whether her religious identity is being used as a shield against criticism rather than as a genuine moral framework. The broader implications of hypocrisy. The persistence of public hypocrisy in religion has consequences that extend beyond the individual. Erodes trust in religious institutions. When religious figures or public personalities fail to live by the values they claim to uphold, it can create cynicism about the religion itself. Discourages believers. Practicing Muslims who genuinely strive to follow their faith may feel disillusioned or disheartened when blatant hypocrisy is allowed to go unchecked. Reinforces stereotypes. For non-Muslims, observing someone like FoodieBeauty may reinforce negative stereotypes about Islam and its followers, especially if they lack context about Islamic teachings. How hypocrisy can be addressed. Addressing hypocrisy within Islam requires a delicate balance between accountability and compassion. Call out behavior, not faith. Muslims can condemn actions that contradict Islamic teachings without questioning someone's status as a Muslim. For example, they can say, her actions are haram and misrepresent Islam, rather than, she's not a Muslim. Encourage genuine change. Instead of shaming, constructive advice and encouragement can help individuals like FoodieBeauty reflect on their behavior and strive for improvement. Promote transparency in faith. Highlighting the difference between sincere believers who struggle and deliberate hypocrites can help non-Muslims understand that individuals like FoodieBeauty don't represent Islam as a whole. The distinction between fallibility and hypocrisy is key to understanding the frustration surrounding public figures like FoodieBeauty. While Islam allows for human imperfection, it also emphasizes the importance of sincerity, intention, and genuine effort to improve. When individuals repeatedly and knowingly disregard these principles, they cross the line into hypocrisy, damaging both their personal credibility and the reputation of the religion they claim to represent. Addressing this hypocrisy requires a nuanced approach that upholds accountability while remaining true to Islamic values of compassion and humility. Why calling out hypocrisy feels justified. Calling out hypocrisy in religion, especially when it comes to public figures, can be a delicate and controversial act. However, when someone's actions repeatedly contradict the values they claim to represent, addressing the disconnect becomes not only justified, but necessary. In the case of FoodieBeauty, her behavior, paired with her public identification as a Muslim, raises questions about accountability, sincerity, and the impact of unchecked hypocrisy on the broader perception of Islam. Public figures and public responsibility. When someone chooses to live their life publicly, they open themselves up to scrutiny. This is particularly true for individuals who claim a religious identity while engaging in behaviors that contradict that faith's teachings. Public figures have a unique platform, and their actions inevitably shape how others perceive the values they claim to represent. In FoodieBeauty's case, her platform amplifies her influence. As a public figure, her behavior reaches a global audience, making her actions more impactful than those of an average individual. She has chosen to tie her identity to Islam. By publicly adopting Islam and wearing the hijab, she positions herself as a representative of the religion, whether she intends to or not. Given these factors, it's reasonable for observers to hold her to a higher standard of accountability. When her actions contradict Islamic values, addressing the disconnect is not about personal attack, but about protecting the integrity of the religion she claims to follow. Criticizing actions versus judging faith. A common argument in Islam is that only Allah can judge someone's faith. This principle discourages Muslims from declaring others to be fake Muslims or questioning their sincerity. However, there's an important distinction to be made: judging faith. Declaring that someone is not a true Muslim, which Islam teaches, is ultimately the domain of Allah. Criticizing actions. Highlighting behaviors that are inconsistent with Islamic principles, which is not only permissible but encouraged as part of constructive advice, naseha. Criticizing FoodieBeauty's actions, her gluttony, drug use, and vulgarity, is not the same as declaring her a non-Muslim. Instead, It's a way of holding her accountable for the public image she creates and the potential harm it does to Islam's reputation. Protecting the integrity of Islam. Religious hypocrisy, particularly when it is public and persistent, has the potential to harm the reputation of a faith far beyond the individual responsible for it. In the case of FoodieBeauty, she misrepresents Islamic values. Her behavior creates confusion about what Islam stands for, particularly among non-Muslims who may not have a nuanced understanding of the religion. She perpetuates negative stereotypes. Her actions reinforce misconceptions about Muslims being hypocritical or insincere in their faith. She disrespects the faith. By claiming the identity of a Muslim while repeatedly disregarding its teachings, she trivializes the religion and its principles. Calling out this behavior is not about personal animosity. It's about safeguarding the integrity of a religion that many hold dear. The role of public accountability. While Islam emphasizes private correction and kindness in advising others, public behavior often warrants public accountability. When someone like FoodieBeauty broadcasts her actions to a global audience, the consequences of her behavior extend beyond her personal life. Addressing her actions publicly serves several purposes. It clarifies Islamic teachings. By highlighting the disconnect between her actions and Islamic values, Muslims can ensure that outsiders don't mistake her behavior for an accurate representation of the faith. It encourages introspection. Public accountability can serve as a wake-up call for individuals who may not fully grasp the impact of their behavior. It sets a standard. Addressing hypocrisy sends a message that religious identity carries responsibilities and that actions should align with beliefs. Bigger picture. Hypocrisy in religion. The issue of hypocrisy is not unique to Islam or FoodieBeauty. It's a universal challenge for all religions, particularly in an age where personal lives are increasingly public. However, the tension between avoiding judgment and maintaining accountability is especially pronounced in Islam, where the principle of only Allah can judge is deeply ingrained. For non-Muslims, this tension can be frustrating to observe. When someone repeatedly and publicly contradicts the values of their religion, it raises questions about the sincerity of their faith and the mechanisms within the religion to address such behavior. Balancing compassion and accountability. Calling out hypocrisy requires a careful balance. On one hand, it's important to avoid self-righteousness and harsh judgment, recognizing that everyone makes mistakes. On the other hand, allowing blatant hypocrisy to go unchecked risks eroding the credibility of the religion. Constructive ways to approach this include focusing on actions, not intentions. Criticize behaviors that contradict religious principles without making assumptions about someone's heart or faith. Encouraging genuine change. Frame critiques in a way that encourages reflection and improvement rather than alienation. Educating outsiders. Use moments of public hypocrisy as opportunities to clarify what the religion truly teaches and what it stands for. Calling out hypocrisy in religion, particularly when it comes to public figures like FoodieBeauty, is not only justified but necessary to protect the integrity of the faith. By focusing on actions rather than faith and emphasizing accountability over judgment, it's possible to address these issues constructively. Public figures have a responsibility to align their actions with the values they claim to represent, and when they fail to do so, it's fair, and often essential, to hold them accountable. This not only protects the reputation of the religion, but also upholds the principles it seeks to promote. The broader lessons on religious accountability. The challenges surrounding religious accountability extend far beyond the case of FoodieBeauty and the specific issues within Islam. They touch on universal questions about how religions should handle hypocrisy, protect their integrity, and maintain credibility in a world that demands both transparency and consistency. Examining these broader lessons provides insight into why religious accountability matters, not just for the faith in question, but for its followers and observers as well. Why accountability is essential in religion. Religions are more than belief systems. They serve as moral frameworks that guide individuals and communities. For a religion to maintain its influence and relevance, it must uphold the values it espouses. When public figures or prominent members fail to align their actions with these values, it creates several problems. Undermining credibility. A religion that tolerates blatant hypocrisy risks being perceived as inconsistent or insincere, weakening its moral authority. Eroding trust among followers. Believers may lose faith in the religion's leadership or teachings if they see hypocrisy going unaddressed. Harming the community's reputation. The actions of a few individuals can tarnish the image of an entire faith, especially in the eyes of outsiders. Accountability ensures that those who claim to represent a religion are held to its standards, reinforcing its integrity and preserving its role as a moral compass. The challenges of holding people accountable. Religious accountability is often easier said than done. In Islam, as in many faiths, principles like humility, forgiveness, and the idea that only God can judge make addressing hypocrisy a sensitive issue. However, these principles can also create barriers to meaningful accountability. Avoidance of conflict. Many religious communities shy away from calling out bad behavior to maintain unity and avoid division. Fear of misjudgment. Religious teachings that emphasize compassion and warn against false accusations can discourage followers from speaking out, even when hypocrisy is evident. Cultural differences. In a global religion like Islam, interpretations of accountability can vary widely, making it difficult to establish a unified approach. These challenges are exacerbated in the age of social media, where public figures' actions are broadcast globally, making their hypocrisy more visible but also harder to address constructively. Lessons from FoodieBeauty's case. The case of FoodieBeauty highlights several key lessons about the importance of accountability in religion. Public behavior has public consequences. When someone openly contradicts the values of their religion, their behavior becomes a reflection of that faith in the eyes of the public. Addressing such actions is essential to prevent misrepresentation. Religious identity comes with responsibility. Claiming a religious identity is not just about belief, it's also about striving to live by the principles of that faith. When individuals fail to do so, they undermine the credibility of the religion they claim to represent. Accountability is a community effort. While individuals like FoodieBeauty bear responsibility for their actions, religious communities also have a role to play in upholding their values and addressing hypocrisy constructively. Finding a balance between compassion and accountability. Religious accountability doesn't have to mean harsh judgment or public shaming. In fact, the most effective approaches often strike a balance between compassion and accountability. Focus on education. Instead of simply condemning bad behavior, use it as an opportunity to educate both believers and non-believers about the true values of the religion. Encourage reflection and growth. Offer constructive criticism that encourages individuals to reflect on their actions and strive for improvement. Promote positive role models. Highlight members of the faith who genuinely live by its principles, offering a counterbalance to those who misrepresent it. By approaching accountability with empathy and a focus on positive change, religious communities can address hypocrisy without alienating individuals or compromising their principles. Broader implications for religions worldwide. While FoodieBeauty's case is specific to Islam, the broader issues of hypocrisy and accountability apply to all religions. In a world where personal lives are increasingly public, religious communities must grapple with new challenges in maintaining their credibility. Transparency is key. Religions must be willing to address hypocrisy openly, rather than ignoring it or dismissing criticism. Consistency matters. Clear, consistent standards for behavior help reinforce the credibility of a religion's teachings. Adaptability without compromise. Religions must find ways to adapt to modern challenges without diluting their core values or principles. These lessons are crucial, not only for preserving the integrity of individual faiths, but also for fostering mutual respect and understanding between religious and non-religious communities. The broader lessons on religious accountability reveal why addressing hypocrisy is vital for the survival and credibility of any faith. Public figures like FoodieBeauty serve as a reminder that actions speak louder than words, and that religious identity comes with a responsibility to uphold the values it represents. By balancing compassion with accountability, religious communities can protect their integrity, educate outsiders, and inspire genuine growth among their members. Ultimately, accountability is not about judging individuals, it's about safeguarding the principles that make a religion meaningful and credible in the first place. Safeguarding religious integrity through accountability. Religious accountability is a complex but essential aspect of maintaining the credibility and integrity of any faith. The case of FoodieBeauty illustrates the challenges that arise when individuals publicly claim a religious identity, but repeatedly and deliberately act in ways that contradict its principles. This hypocrisy not only damages the reputation of the individual, but also creates broader consequences for the religion they claim to represent. Islam, like many other religions, acknowledges human fallibility and emphasizes forgiveness and repentance. However, when someone like FoodieBeauty engages in consistent and willful hypocrisy while presenting themselves as a follower of the faith, it raises important questions about sincerity, responsibility, and the mechanisms within religions to address such behavior. For outsiders, this lack of accountability can create confusion about what Islam truly represents. For believers, it can foster frustration and disillusionment when public figures misrepresent their faith without facing meaningful consequences. In both cases, the result is a diminished perception of the religion's values and moral authority. Key takeaways. Actions speak louder than words. Religious identity is more than a label. It carries the responsibility of striving to live by the values and principles of the faith. The role of public accountability. When public figures fail to uphold these values, addressing their actions is not about judgment but about protecting the integrity of the religion. Balancing compassion and criticism. Constructive approaches that focus on education, reflection, and positive role models can help address hypocrisy without alienating individuals or communities. Religions must find ways to address these challenges, particularly in a world where personal lives are increasingly public and scrutiny is unavoidable. By holding individuals accountable for their actions, while fostering a culture of compassion and growth, religious communities can uphold their principles, educate others about their values, and inspire genuine change. Ultimately, the goal of religious accountability is not to judge or condemn, but to preserve the integrity of the faith and ensure that it continues to serve as a meaningful guide for individuals and communities. By addressing hypocrisy constructively, religions can not only protect their reputation, but also reaffirm the values that make them worth following in the first place.